Hello and welcome everybody to the Ballers Across the Pond. A later episode than usual. We're going to wrap up all of the conference championship weekend. Boys, how are we doing? Well, first of all.
Yeah, no, solid. I mean, I don't know, like both the teams that are through, I think we'll get into it sort of later on. I have my thoughts on both. One is kind of like a new disdain, and then the other one is kind of like it's lost its luster. We'll sort of get into it in a bit. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But yeah, no, we're nearing the end.
Peter.
um, yeah, interesting championship weekend. Would be nice to break down the games. And a disappointment. Let's put it that way.
It was a disappointment on multiple, obviously, two teams. They had contrasting fortunes within the games that they have. We're going to get to that in a little bit. There's a little bit of league news that we want to get through. First of all, just something to mention. Ryan Jensen, center for the Buccaneers, is retiring after 9 years in the NFL.
Right.
So we know he was making efforts to, get back to the field, but he has decided to hang up the cleats. In other news, the Raiders are expected to hire Cliff Kingsbury as their OC. As our resident Cliff Kingsbury expert, Peter, thoughts on this?
My thoughts on this is that this is perfect for Cliff because that's what he's always wanted to do, just coach offense. And when he was with the Cardinals, our offenses was pretty good. Um, he always had like top 10 offensive finishes. And I think he's a really good coordinator. I don't know if he'll ever be a good head coach, but this is a staple for him. I think the Raiders offense will improve from what they were a year ago. When it comes to offense, he can do some pretty good things. But I just hope that he's learned from with the Cardinals because sometimes some of the play calling wasn't good, discipline on offense wasn't good. There's a penchant for penalties with the offense. So I think now probably he'll be able to fix all those ailments because he doesn't have to focus on other aspects of the team. He just can just focus on getting the offense to hum and play the maximum level. So it'll be interesting to see how he does with the offense. I think it's going to be a good hire for him for the next year or two, but I still don't think he'll be a good head coach after let's say he's done this for a year or two and someone team want to hire him as a head coach. I think he's just cut out to be an OC for the rest of his life.
I think
Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Dylan.
No.
Yeah. So I think he'll probably find himself in a head coaching role again at some point. Only because, like I said, he has the experience, and a lot of these owners are very much they kind of look at the hiring process as like a corporate side. In that, if you have the experience in the past, and don't get me wrong, like you said, Pete, he knows how to coach offense. It's going to be an air raid offense. But it's going to be good for him to sort of see another way of doing things, So he's had no NFL. He's never really sat behind anyone in the NFL as like a coach. I think only briefly, right?
Yes,
So
but
yeah, but
the good thing for this is that yes, you brought it up is that with the Raiders, Antonio Pierce is putting together a very good coaching. They had Marvin Lewis as an assistant head coach. He has lots of head coaching experience. So if Marvin Lewis can mentor Cliff in his role as an OC, then maybe he has a chance to be a good NFL head coach in a year or two time. I think the Raiders offense will be so much improved.
Yeah,
But then again,
huge.
it makes the AFC West a very interesting division for next year. Without a doubt, on paper, they look at the toughest division going forward next year.
It's an air raid offense, so that's the approach.
Thing is, can Jimmy G lead that style of offense?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right? And I don't think me personally, I don't think they're gonna go with Jimmy G. Now, there's been
Yeah.
some rumors saying that the Raiders potentially gonna try and trade up to the #1 overall pick with the Bears. Now that they've got Cliff as the OC. Because think back to 2019 when the Cardinals hired him as a head coach, the rumors was like, oh, we're gonna take Kyler. We ended up taking Kyler because, you know, Kyler's offense he played in college was similar to how the offense that Cliff coached in college. So now the rumors flying around is, are they gonna trade up #1 to get Caleb? And right now the going price is 4 first-round picks, and Mark Davis, he's like his dad. I could see it happening, but
going from 13 to 1, that's
would be you'd have to mortgage a lot.
But that's why I said 4 first-round picks. That's
just
start the conversation. That's
that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't
so
happen.
If that don't happen, there's also the possibility of Jaden Daniels at #3 with New England, because Jaden Daniels played in Arizona State University where Antonio Pierce was a coach there. There's a relationship, and Antonio Pierce has kept in contact with Jaden Daniels since their college days.
Or could they trade for Justin Fields?
That's also been a possibility that they've mentioned that they trade for Justin Fields. But the question is, at this point, I mean, but that would be a good challenge for Cliff, though. If they were to trade for Justin Fields, it wasn't a question that can Cliff fix Justin Fields, essentially. And most of the quarterbacks that Cliff has been with have been really talented. I mean, I look at it like Mahomes, Williams, Murray. These quarterbacks have supreme talent that they were going to be successful whether Cliff coached them or not. That's the way I see it. Because they were successful in high school, right? And they were successful in college, and Kyler's been successful in the NFL, Baker as well. So it's a possibility, but I feel like they'll go get a new quarterback in the draft, if anything, more so than trade for Justin Fields.
Well, over the coming weeks towards the draft, coming weeks and months towards the draft, we will percolate some more. All right. There is some other NFL news. I just want to effectively just breeze through them. Patriots hiring ex-Browns offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt as the new OC. And they need a quarterback. And Ravens promote inside linebackers coach to defensive coordinator, so that is Zach Orr. Now, I think the last few Ravens DCs have been their inside linebackers coach. It's like a natural progression within that organization. That's what my brother was actually saying to me. And the Commanders are set to hire Cowboys DC Dan Quinn as new head coach. It hasn't gone through as of yet, but that is the expectation. Thoughts on that one, actually? Commanders having Dan Quinn. That wasn't the expectation, though. Going in a week ago.
I think Dan Quinn has kind of like been a hot commodity because he's managed to get a team to the Super Bowl, and I think the owners and hold that in high regard because that's not easy to do. It depends. They've got like a young GM over there as well, who's kind of like a bit of like an upstart. So I think they're going with like a safe pick over here. I think a lot of his failings have usually been in that he's very aggressive, sometimes overly aggressive on defense. But as a head coach, don't get me wrong, he's going to have like a lot of say on the defense. But I think Eric Bieniemy is going to be taking care of that offense, and they expect him to sort of be able to hold that offense.
Go.
So yeah, as I was saying, I think it's a safe pick. I think it's a good pick. I don't think it's like that bad, but it's also insider information. I think because he knows Dan Quinn if they play the Dallas Cowboys, let's be real, he knows the makeup of that team offensively, defensively. He knows how to take advantage of weaknesses on that offense, and he knows how to take advantage of defenses on the Dallas Cowboys defense. So this is kind of like a play by Washington to sort of because they know that division is really hard to win in. I don't think Jerry Jones is happy about this because he knows that
It's going to a divisional rival as well. So
it's a divisional rival, and you know our personnel inside and out. Like you studied them, you know everything about them. Like so that's a massive advantage going into a game, especially if it's your head coach. If anyone can stop Dak, it's going to be him. So those games against Washington where they easily like outplayed them, it's not going to be the case anymore because he knows your kryptonite for every positional group. He knows first name, middle name, and last, and if they have children. So it's literally he's probably met their kids too.
Although the one thing that you do, the one thing about NFL rosters is year-on-year churn. There is a significant churn.
But that Dallas core offensively is pretty much going to stay intact. That defensive core defensively is pretty much going to stay intact. You'd like to think they might lose a few pieces, but they're not going to lose like keystones of each side of the ball. So I think that this is more of like a play to not only get a solid head coach. Like I said, I don't really have an issue with it. But it's also a play to keep that division tight. With my Eagles spiraling, it's kind of up for grabs, really, although I don't think that's going to happen because we made our own hirings as well. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, the news was that for me, it feels like that Dan Quinn was always their second option that they ended up with because
Ben Johnson was, and he decided to stay,
and he chose to stay in Detroit. Plus, I think Ben Johnson did it on purpose. He priced himself out as well because the report was like he wanted $15 million a season. And for a first-time head coach, teams are not paying you $50 million a year in your first job at the age of 37. Youngest coach had to have the biggest money. I think even the NFL will frown upon it and be like, "Yo, Commanders, you can't do this because this is like."
Other owners will sort of like get involved and they'll lobby against it. Like they have their own phone calls and they're going to be like, "You can't keep paying him because the next guy comes up, he's going to ask for a vet's going to ask for 20 million." Like, well,
the coaches are fully guaranteed contracts as well.
Yeah, so it's.
Oh yeah, that's another.
It's fully guaranteed. Yeah.
The funny thing is, we still pay. Can't believe we're paying Cliff Kingsbury to be the Raiders OC. Essentially,
you're still paying. Yeah, that's how it goes. But the owners.
That is how it goes. All right, let's move on now to actually the action that happened last weekend. The championship games, and boy, there's a lot to talk about. And I think we need to start off with the Chiefs and the Ravens. There's a lot to decipher from this game.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, both teams' defense are brilliant because the Ravens' defense kept them in that game, irrespective of what their offense was doing to mess it up. And that Chiefs' defense held on to that lead because they only put on 17 points on the board. And if you look at the offensive drives in that second half of the Chiefs, it was pump, 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 and they did not go over the halfway line, but that Chiefs defense just locked it down and made sure... They also made the Ravens make errors.
Yep. I think
it's not just the fact that the Ravens made errors on their own part. They made them make some errors, like, say, for example, forcing the fumble.
Yep. They forced errors, but I also think the Ravens as a whole didn't put their best foot forward. I don't think it's a lack of preparation. I think John Harbaugh is too good of a coach to not be prepared for this type of game. I think this is more of like the personnel sort of not realizing the importance of the moment. You know, we're seeing dumb penalties. We're seeing taunting penalties that are costing you yards when your team needs it. This is a low-scoring game, you know, and that's not going to help the offense or the defense. You know, credit to the Chiefs. Their defense this year has really stepped up, and I can see themselves, regardless of what happens in this Super Bowl, almost like reinventing their team. to like almost like a hard-nosed run game with stout defense and Patrick Mahomes just looking after the ball, and then when he has to make those big plays, he can. But yeah, no, the Ravens didn't do themselves any favors. I think they kind of were playing not to lose, and it kind of cost them. Like, yeah, when you're
Would you
in the
say they
divisional
were
round,
playing not to lose, or do you think that Lamar was somehow handcuffed in what he was told, or handcuffed in his head?
it didn't
'Cause we
seem
talk-
like Lamar was himself. Like, for
I think-
me, I think he was
Now
told
this is
to play a
speculation. This is
certain way.
not like, because we saw well, I don't want to draw into the speculation as to why, but there were numerous times where there were running lanes for him to take.
Yep,
There
and he
was.
didn't take them. I think. Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Pete.
go ahead, Vo.
I think he was told to play a certain way. So every team has a game plan. Like, this is what they're going to do. All right. And I think he didn't want to deviate from it, and it's not really deviating, but in games like this, you have to be Lamar Jackson. Like, if this is the game where you lean forward and put your body on the line to get to the Super Bowl, like you don't hold back, and I feel as though
Here's the thing.
I'm just going to interject
Yeah,
on that
go
point
ahead.
quickly. You could see he was frustrated at times, right? Because you could see that in his in his demeanor. That means it's not that he was. It didn't seem like he was trying to stick to the game plan, but he ended up sticking to their game plan, which was not the right thing to do, because one thing they shouldn't have done was abandon the run.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a team, as a whole.
See, but that's true. I totally agree with that. But I think, going back to Will's earlier point, I think this game Lamar was in his own head, because this is my opinion, right? I haven't heard this from the rumors or anything. I believe the offensive coordinator came up with a game plan. Lamar tried to stick with that game plan and just didn't want to deviate from it, or he was trying to prove that I can pass my way to win this game. I can be a pocket passer in this game. Whereas the game called for Lamar to be Lamar, like he was in the previous game against the Texans. Because against the Texans, when they were taking away the passing lanes, or when they're playing good pass coverage, he would take the yards they gave him. He would run the football, because he was elite balance in the Texans game. He was 150 yards passing, 100 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns, right? And
crazy.
And that's why I'm saying he needed to do that, because the Chiefs, I think the way Lamar played also played a little bit into the Chiefs' defense's hands, whereby they're like, we don't believe you can pass the football, so we'll leave the rushing.
Even though we know he is a perfectly capable passer, it's not that he's not capable. We know he's perfectly capable, but it's more of the Chiefs were saying,
the Chiefs
beat us this way, and he tried to beat them that way instead.
Exactly. So Lamar shouldn't have done that. He should have been, oh, you're going to give me all this green grass? I'm going to run. But then also, another point I'll make is, if Lamar had, how'd you put it, started running the football and taking the 10 and 15 yards they were giving him, that could also open up the pass, because the linebackers will start cheating. And also, your offensive coordinator will start realizing, hey, we can run the football. Let's get a run game going, because if our QB is getting 10, 15 yards, let's not start giving it to the back a bit.
Yep.
And
Lamar Jackson. Go ahead.
So what I was saying was, it wasn't just the running game with regards to Lamar. It was they abandoned it completely with regards to the running backs, because Gus was probably the better running back out of the two on the day, and they hardly ran the ball 11 times or something like that.
Yep, which is terrible. Like, you got to be hitting in the mid-teens minimum with your back. Like, Lamar is so electric. You don't understand. Like, we haven't seen a runner like that. He's the fastest player on the field, both teams right now. And he had 8 carries for 54. He got 54 yards and barely really touched the ball, on the ground. Imagine I'm a firm believer that I think sometimes game plan at offensive coordinators, I'm not an NFL coach. I'm not going to pretend to be. I'm sure they know a lot of information, but sometimes they it seems as though they overthink things. They're like, oh, they're expecting us to come out here and not pass the ball. Or guess what? We're gonna pass the ball. We're gonna surprise them. I personally think, even if they stack the box, you run the ball anyway, because they have to prove they can stop the run. They have to earn the right to say, we can stop the run. If the Chiefs can stop the run, cool. Then you move away from it and try and balance it out some more. But let the Chiefs show you that they can stop you on the ground.
And an
They didn't do
example,
that.
an example of a team that runs the ball irrespective is the 49ers.
hmm
Yeah, 49ers did that.
They continue to run just generally as a trend, they continue to run the ball because they know that they're going to break one, right?
Yeah. And even when you look at the game with the Ravens Chiefs in the AFC Championship, even the Chiefs ran the ball more than the Ravens did. And even though they were not getting a lot of yards, they were still trying to check on some runs.
Their offensive line was doing pretty damn well because they were getting, whilst they weren't getting yards, they were getting penetration in terms of linemen downfield.
I don't think people realize that offensive linemen would rather run the ball than pass. They love
going downhill, right?
They love attacking the defensive line and bringing it to them. For once, they don't have to go backwards. And more often than not, they're a little bit stronger sometimes, not all the time. Especially, I'd say against DNs, they can move them if they have to. So they love attacking the ball. So this is probably one of those games where they're going to look back on the film, and I think Lamar did a very good job of maybe downplaying at the end, because we saw the press conference. He seemed like he's already moved on from the game mentally, like he's not going to let this mentally affect him. But
he's going to show one thing to the press.
There's no way you can go through the film and see all the opportunities that you had. And it's not just that, we had Zay Flowers who played amazing penalties, that fumble on sort of diving
1 yard line,
the end zone on the 1 line. That's definitely not like him, and I think he's going to kick himself for that. But the taunting penalty, that could have been prevented. Raekwon Smith sort of going above and beyond, like that's not like him. So I think they were very much like
they were riled up a little bit.
Yeah, I think they had so much pressure to make it to the Super Bowl that and I'm guilty of this when I played. Sometimes I'd tackle someone and I'd realize I'm still driving them into the ground when they're already on the ground, and that's because you're sort of caught up in the moment. Tempers are high, emotions are high, and perhaps you're not thinking. The Chiefs have been here before. They're here every damn year. So they're pretty much like, they know how it feels like, they know how to perform. Patrick Mahomes has found a way to overcome. And the thing is, this may be like the weakest Chiefs team we're going to see in a while, because they're going to reload next year. They're going to draft. They're going to bring in free agents. They're going to sort out that offensive skill position-wise outside of the tight end. Kelsey's going to be back.
Oh,
This
Kelsey
may be the best. Good luck trying to beat them
to start the
again.
game. Right, you look at the first 2 drives, they started like a house on fire, right?
Yeah.
Offensively, they were great and then if you look at the numbers, Mahomes didn't have a bad game. We're not saying that he had a bad game, because you look at it, he had a pass rating over 100. He was efficient, but the thing was, but but ultimately they had 2 drives in the second. They had more possession in the second half than the Ravens did in terms of time of possession. The time of possession between the first half and the second half was identical. So technically he did manage the game, but managing it just through, they got through to the halfway line and then they punted it. And they got through to the halfway line and they punted it.
We need Joe Burrow back. Like I like Patrick Mahomes a lot. I think he's really cool, but I'm starting to see, don't get me wrong, they're not cheaters like the Patriots. Damn those guys, but I'm starting to see a little bit of a superiority complex, maybe a little bit of arrogance. Remember early on in the season when those refs called it back, he was like, they're trying to stop greatness. I'm like, no, Pat, it was a penalty. Your guy was in the wrong, blah blah blah. So I'm starting to see that, but don't get me wrong, The Chiefs are only going to get better next season, regardless of what happens. This could have
Some
been the only
some
year.
of that is but
team
some
could have
of that
finished
is
above them.
manipulative. Some of that is nothing. That is just sound bites from manipulating the situation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's something is to distract from like I'm gonna bring
like
it
half-
to Peter,
half of what they
right?
said.
Right,
Yeah.
bring it to Arsene Wenger used to talk gibberish to distract from the reality, right? At times.
Hey, yeah, he did. Fergie did the same thing. Just
Exactly,
gotta find a
Fergie
way
used to do like they used to mask everything so then they can get down to business. Because what do they get down to business to? They get to the AFC Championship
Yeah. I mean,
without fail. They get there.
Yeah, this Chiefs team is only going to be better next year. Joe Burrow is out. This might be the best chance a team could have had to jump over them. Buffalo, if they can't do it now, then I don't know, man. There was this meme online where you had Stephon Diggs. I mean, like looking at the confetti like 3 years in a row to the Chiefs because they beat them, and I think the comment was, "This is the 4th time Stephon Diggs has been looking on the sideline, looking up," and that's getting really old. It's frustrating, but they find a way to make it to the dance every season. If they don't get to the dance, they're in the divisional championship game, and it
Well,
takes
the last 6 years in a
whole
row they've
city to
got there.
beat.
So
Exactly, and it takes
They've
a whole
got a
city to
6 years
beat
in a
them.
row. I mean,
That's-
this year was the year that the streak was supposed to break, and I think
the defense is that
had the
much
best
better.
chance out.
Also, their
out
defense
everybody.
has been the best of all the years that they've had, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
this is the
Yeah,
thing.
the defense has
the
been, but
defense isn't
but
going
here's the
anywhere.
thing: as good as the defense was last in the FC Championship game,
No, I
the
mean
rate-
generally,
I'll say,
as a whole, their defense is better this year than in the past 5 years.
yeah, it has been. It has been, no question. But as good as it has been, the Ravens still had opportunities to win the game with how good the Chiefs defense was, and they didn't
Correct,
take
but
advantage of it.
then that is a match between two quite evenly matched teams, and somebody's got to win, right?
Yeah,
Somebody
Yeah,
has to win,
absolutely.
and somebody's got to seize the moment. And funnily enough, the person who has managed to seize the moment 2 years in a row, in terms of catching the ball, when we say he can't catch the ball, is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. 2 years in a row, he has closed the game with a game clinching catch, because it's not.
I mean, that was a body catch, man. I was kind of worrying, but
But
he brought it
2
in.
years in a row. 2 years in a row, he's done it. They've sent him deep, and he has caught the ball, and that is it. The game is done.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were in the position to do that. And when you look at it, it's like when Dennis Green said back in the day, the famous Dennis Green quote, which is, "We had them and we let them off the hook." The Ravens know it. They know it.
Speaking,
and these moments are fleeting. So
yeah,
this is the reality. Like when you're this deep into a season, you have to let it all out. Like, I know that wasn't the game plan, but just like Lamar did, like in the last game against the Texans, he took matters into his own hands, and he was there like, "I'm not losing this game," and they started to pull away. But I think they're good enough to be back. The Ravens will be back. I think they have like a complete team and they can continue to build. But
Well, they're about to 13 sacks to the Arizona Cardinals anyway.
yeah,
Defense.
yeah, the Chiefs have done it again. So
speaking of a team that got let off the hook, move on to the NFC Championship game. Now, the Detroit Lions should have won this game, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But for as bad as Brock Purdy played in that first half, he was lights out in that second. He did what he needed to do to get that team over the line. When he needed to run, he ran the ball. He passed the ball pretty well in that second half as well. And it doesn't help. It does help that, yes, you have Christian McCaffrey also in the backfield. So
yeah,
I'm unsure as to, like, we know that the Lions The decisions that Dan Campbell made will always be the talking points, but I do lend myself to the argument of you have an ethos, and if you not fully betray that ethos, but like 4th and 2, you've got to be catching that ball. You catch it, like, in terms of quarterback, they executed the play, right? Quarterback he gave the ball to the receiver didn't catch it. More than once. Now, the conversation would be completely different had he caught that ball. And it's all about, it always comes down to execution on the day. In terms of the Lions, I think that they're going to, well, they're a young team, so they can easily...
Very young team.
They can definitely get back towards this next season, especially with Ben Johnson staying on as the OC.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think and that's part of it as well. I think Ben Johnson feels as though with what he has, and it's a testimony to the team that they can get back and they can compete for a Super Bowl, if not potentially win it all. So I think that's why he wants to come back, because even if you become a head coach, you're on a team that needs a new head coach. So I think he wants to taste that Super Bowl air once to say, I've done it, or try and hit it. And him deciding to stay on the team is a glowing endorsement for the Lions, because I think he honestly feels it can be done, which is why he's back next year. Brock Purdy gets like a lot of bad rep for being like a game manager. I think Cam Newton was like, he's not even in the top 10 best players on the 49ers, which I think is a bit of a stretch. Yeah, it is true. But I think a lot of the hate doesn't necessarily come from if he can play or not, but I think he feels as though he's very much the reason why they're winning as well. When everyone on the outside knows, hey, we've seen Sam Darnold on this team and he's put up points. You could put anyone, a lot of QBs behind there, and they'll put up points. You know, you've got Christian McCaffrey, you've got Debo, you know, you've got Ayuk, you've got weapons across the board.
The only counter to that,
left tackle.
The only counter to that, Will,
yeah,
because you're rattling off everything, you know, all of the things that are great about that offense. But what is one thing that is systematic about that team that they've been unable to do under this head coach? Come from behind.
Come from behind, yeah.
Right?
And they've started doing that now.
And he led that. Okay, no. He has done that once.
Yeah.
But it's whether they, next week, obviously, we're going to have a full preview show over on the Super Bowl. But is that going to happen? Is he going to need to bring them from behind, or are they actually going to sort themselves out and not get themselves in a massive hole? Because if they're getting themselves in as big a hole, they're not going to be coming back against the Chiefs.
I think Brock Purdy's going to have to make, this is the biggest game of his career. Obviously, it is the Super Bowl, but against the Chiefs defense next week, I think the formula here, I mean, we've seen it. Take away Debo.
It's not just Debo. I mean,
take away. I know they have McCaffrey, but you take away Debo. All right, let Ayuk prove he can get over the top, and
he can.
He can.
Well, Ayuk got in the end zone in this game. In this game against the
Lions,
zone,
but let him beat 1-on-1. Take away Debo. Stack.
You don't want to leave Ayuk 1-on-1, bro. Ayuk is really good.
Ayuk is the wide receiver 1.
But I would much rather remove Debo from the game and see let's challenge Brock Purdy.
Ayuk a bit short here, because Brandon Ayuk had 1,342 yards and 7 touchdowns. That's wide receiver 1 numbers.
Yeah.
There.
I know. But all I'm saying, remove Debo. We've seen every time Debo has had a bad game, what's happened to the 49ers? They've had a bad game. And that's the
when you say Debo has a bad game, it's like, okay, is he fumbling? Is he?
I know, but I mean, like he's not productive. Like he's taken out. So we're talking less than 30 yards.
If he's injured, then that's a different thing. But
if he's injured, he's different.
Getting back. So getting back to the Brock Purdy point, right? So, Peter, he had so Brock showed some game-changing capabilities, but I wouldn't consider him a game changer. Correct?
Yeah, I agree with that statement and that assessment.
Now, what I would say is that he has shown himself to have an ability. Well, you said this to me offline, that he has the ability to be clutch. Because when we consider the only time he has lost a playoff game was when he got that UCL injury. The only time he has been bad in the playoffs is when he got injured. In terms of bad to the point that he causes his team to lose. Players can have a bad half and they can recover. Right? Because your team is good enough. If your team is good enough to get yourself into the Super Bowl, if you have a bad quarter, you can recover from that because you can still play well for the other 3 quarters and still win the game.
Yeah.
Unless you're Dak when you're throwing pick sixes.
Yeah, unless you're turning the ball over in that bad quarter, you can still find a way to. Well, unless
if you're going 3 and out, it's a little bit different, right? You're going 3 and out, and you're punting the ball down the field, and you're pinning them down inside their own 20. Then that's a little bit different than turning the ball over.
Unless you sold yourself to the devil and you are he who shall not be named, and you're aided by a team not doing anything in the Super Bowl in the second half, then yeah. Because remember, he threw two picks.
That was the defensive slug, though, that game, wasn't it, against the Rams?
I'm talking about the 28-3. He threw 2 picks.
Oh, the 28-3, yes. No, I thought, yeah. That is a momentum game, right? When you see the tidal wave coming, and you know there's nothing that you can do to stop it. Because I remember after the first touchdown, I was at the Reading, the Berkshire Renegades Super Bowl event in Reading, and I was watching it with their team, and I just turned around and I was like, Patriots are winning this. After the first touchdown, after bringing it back to 28-10, I was like, this game is done.
There's certain teams,
it's done. I was like,
it's the same with the 49ers. Like, I think if they work their way back, then they're going to slowly pull away because they're built like that. So
I mean, the game it feels hard done by with Detroit, right? Because in a sense, you can equate it to being a choke job because they were up, by 3 scores, and you look at it and you're like, how did you lose the game? Because normally, in a lot of circumstances, they should have won this game with a big leader they open up. But obviously, the 49ers are no slouch. They're very talented roster. They got their act together, got back in the game and won the game.
Also, on the defensive side, just to lead you, they got Goff moving east-west. They got him, moving sideways and throwing on the run, and that's not his forte. And that's the limitations of the player.
They made the adjustment, and I think Steve Wilkes decided, okay, we're not going to let you just sit back there in the pocket. We're going to push the pocket. You're going to have to find a different launch point as a quarterback, and he couldn't do that in terms of making the adjustment. This is why sometimes in some of these games, having those type of quarterbacks is a key aspect of it. Because the thing is, okay, so when you analyze these type of games, there's 2 quarterbacks. Like, for example, Jared Goff is in the mode of a Brady Peyton Manning, right? How big Brady and Peyton Manning react to you pushing the pocket and they get the ball out of your hands very quicker. Jared Goff couldn't make that adjustment. If you have, and it's either you're a pocket guy or you're a mobile guy. A mobile guy that can throw on the run like a Lamar, like a Mahomes.
Well, even a mobile guy in Purdy running with the rock.
Exactly. Yeah, like Purdy running with the rock to make effort, and Jared Goff can't do that. So if you're a pocket guy, you need to learn how to be like the Brady-esque Peyton
Just
thing,
get it out of the hand quickly.
If they push the pocket, ball come out very fast so they don't get to me. Otherwise, once you push the pocket, you come out, you can't throw on the run. It messes up with the game. Say that you're good at throwing on the run, so you can go east and west and still throw it down the field, or they push the pocket and you get the ball out of your hands very quick. So that happened to Jared Goff. But I'm sure, and I think judging from Ben Johnson turning on the head coaching office, it seems like he also took a little bit of the. For me, it sounds like accountability. He feels like we can do better. I feel like I can do better and make better adjustments next time if we find ourselves in that situation again. Going forward, so I think that's what Ben Johnson look at as well.
And what you see is with those pieces, you've got Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta's going to be even better next year, right? Amon-Ra is going to continue to play at that level. He gets even better. Great. Jahmyr Gibbs will have his second year in the league, and he will flourish. And then you have Jameson Williams, who's going to really come in. He really should come into his own because he's that deep threat. He has that ability to completely blow the top off of the defense. So
he's shown that, yep.
And he's shown those capabilities. So with more reps on the in game, with more getting more intricate ways of getting him involved in that offense, it can only mean good things offensively for this Lions group, especially with that offensive line. It's so damn good.
Yeah, the offensive line is really well built. And they're very good. And I can see a breakout season for Jameson Williams. We haven't really seen his capabilities as a wideout. So it's kind of like at the moment he has the capability to be the Debo for the Lions, but then I think he's more wide receiver centric, whereby those deep shots will really because he's explosive.
We saw it. We definitely saw it in this game with that reverse touchdown. Because
and that's even more explosive than Debo usually is.
So I think the Lions, particularly need to look on the defensive side of the ball when it comes to their off-season acquisitions in terms of the draft and trying to make things better, because they have some holes that they need to fill a little bit. But
yes, I think particularly the corner. Yeah, I think they need to really look at upgrading their cornerback group because I don't think it's as strong as it needs to be. I think they're fine with their linebacking group and the defensive line group, although they might add a body here or there. But I think the backfield, especially the corners, is where they need to pay particular attention on their defense.
And one thing I also managed to think, I'll bring you on this one. So all 4 teams that made the championship game have an elite tight end.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That shows how important this position is.
Yep.
Because you look at all of those players, they're complete and utter game changers. Kittle, game changer. Laporta, game changer. Kelsey, same. And Mark Andrews. They are massive focal points in the passing game. 3 of them in the blocking game. I wouldn't say Kelsey massively, but he did do some blocks this weekend.
Yep.
Gone. Well, with Kittle being a complete and utter monster in the blocking game as well.
Yeah, your the tight end now is no longer. I mean, we're talking like if you go back 12 years, it was almost like basically like an extra offensive lineman. Really, like you didn't really use them much, but I think. I remember back, I think it was Sean Payton that kind of like started that resurgence with Jimmy Graham way back when. That sort of opened the door. Obviously, Tony Gonzalez way back when as well opened the door there. But now it's such a pivotal position, like receiving type tight ends. It's a mismatch across the board. They're too fast for linebackers and they're too big for corners. So who do you guard on them? And it's kind of forced NFL defenses to evolve. Like your linebackers now have to be able to run. They've got to be able to cover tight ends. So that's kind of changed the game a lot. I'm hoping my Eagles get they won't, but the Georgia.
Do you not think the Eagles have a good enough tight end in Dallas Goedert?
He's not going to be there next year.
Well, he's never read Dallas Goddard. He's never read Dallas Goddard. I don't know
I
what
think he
you
was
have
special.
against Dallas Goddard.
He was meant to come in and replace Zach Ertz. But here's the thing: we only took Dallas Goddard to stop the Dallas Cowboys from drafting him. He's a good tight end, but I don't think he was our first.
So you think, if you look at it, no, he is going to be there next season, and the reason is they can't trade him away.
Yep.
Exactly.
Well, they can trade him away, but they only save like $3 million in cap. So it's not much. They don't save anything in terms of trading him away. So he's, as far as I'm concerned, he's going to be there next year. And it's other pieces that you need to, as an Eagles team, that need to look at. But if you look at across the board, a lot of these teams, tight end is one of the positions they're going to need to. That means Bowers is going to be quite highly sought after. Yeah.
Because he's a receiving type tight end. He's got the size, the speed, the strength.
No, he's not just a receiving tight end. But
he can block too. Yeah, Georgia. Yeah, no, he's the complete